Hello, Exiles. Thanks for reminding me, Keith. I've had it off for recording video, so I've been silent this whole time. All right. Yeah, welcome to my Path of Exile, reading of the Harvest Notes, Harvest Patch Notes for Path of Exile 3.11 Harvest League. And yeah, I'm just going to get through. Said that in. It's Joseph's voice. Man, he has great videos, really good videos. One of the few people that I watch through all of it because he's going to stress test Vulcan. True. If anyone can do it, he can. 1,000,000 poisons per second. All right. So let's get into this. The challenge leagues are a great opportunity for a fresh start in a new economy, etc., etc. All your old characters, that's the same as usual. I'm going to skip over the usual stuff, basically telling you why you should get into a challenge league. In the Harvest Challenge League, you'll meet Oshabi, the Asmeri Mystic, who's enlisted your help in exploring the mysterious powers of the Sacred Grove. In each area of Ray class, you'll discover a seed cache and will be able to travel through Oshabi's portal to the Sacred Grove to plant those seeds. Fully grown seed crops unearth dangerous monsters when harvested. Slaying those harvested monsters yield their life force, a powerful resource which can be used for crafting and growing more exotic crops. The crafting potential from harvested monsters is immense, unlocking new power for both leveling and endgame players alike. Some harvested monsters may yield higher end seeds or higher tier seeds that require more elaborate garden setups but grant even more powerful crafting options. Climbing the tiers of seeds will eventually pit you against some powerful new bosses that can drop new unique items exclusively available from them. With 3.11, there's standard hardcore solo self-found variations of Harvest. Yeah, that's always true. New mods make the game harder. True. New Challenge League includes a set of 40 new challenges, as usual. 12 challenges, you'll get Footprints. 24 challenges, you'll get a Harvest Cloak. And 36 challenges, you'll get the Harvest Portal. Pretty standard. From the 19th challenge onward, you'll get the totem. Hey, how's it going, Steven? New patch notes. New league starting in a couple of days. Just reading through, chilling, enjoying a hot toddy, which is pretty good. Except it's Jim Bean, which, yeah, but it's like a pre-mixed hot toddy. It's not bad, though. I put a cinnamon stick in it, and that helped a lot. Hey, Jamar, how's it going, dude? Just getting started reading this. Let's get comfy. This is going to be a nice long ride here. Making my own booze still? Awesome. How's that going? You're doing beer this time, right? I think you made mead last time. Added a new strength skill gem, General's Cry. Performs a war cry, taunting nearby enemies to attack the user and summoning Mirage Warriors from nearby corpses. The Mirage Warriors each use a linked attack skill once before dissipating. So there was a demonstration of this skill that Bex uploaded earlier, and it looked a little underwhelming to me, to be honest. I mean, you get 2 of them, I think, and they each attack once. It just seems like kind of a waste of a skill gem, but we'll see how that ends up working out. Beer and mead. Mead is much easier. Yeah, I could see that. Added a new strength skill gem, Intimidating Cry. Performs a war cry, intimidating nearby enemies and taunting them to attack the user, as well as exerting the user's next 2 attacks. Grants a buff which reduces the effect of enemy armor against your hits. Okay. So, just kind of armor penetration. That's not too bad. Hey, how's it going, Ray? Enlighten me, please. Morning here. I will do, man. Hey, how's it going, Tariq? It's okay for clearing, but might be better on a minion build. That's fair. Well, the whole issue I have is that, it's on a cooldown and they only attack once. So it feels like you're just going to have to do it non-stop for General's Cry, which makes it seem pretty underwhelming for me. Like, you may as well just be attacking. I guess if you got instant war cries, maybe it might be worth it, potentially. But we'll see. Yeah, because it requires corpses too. So you're going to have to kill things by other means, then use this over and over again. It just seems very underwhelming comparatively. But seismic cry performs a war cry, taunting, etc. usual, exerting the user's next 4 slam attacks, grants a buff which makes it easier for you to stun enemies. I didn't like the stun reworks, but we'll probably cover that soon, and I'll talk more about it. But I read about them in the design manifesto, and it didn't look great. Ancestral Cry, War Cry, taunts, user's next 8 strikes attacks, grants a buff which gives you bonus armor and melee range. 8's pretty good. Urgent Orders support. Supports Warcry skills, makes them faster to use, but lengthens their cooldowns. Okay, so that's kind of cool, especially for some that have like longer uses, such as Ancestral Cry there. We'll have to see how much armor it ends up giving, what the actual numbers are on that. Hey, how's it going, David? And yeah, not too much, Tariq. Just enjoying a hot toddy, reading the patch notes, and yeah, we're gonna see what new spicy stuff this league has in store for us. All right, we got Wintertide Brand. Creates a magical brand that can attach to nearby enemies, dealing cold damage over time and chilling them. It periodically activates while attached, gaining stages that raise the damage. When removed, a short duration debuff dealing the same amount of damage over time and chill is applied to each nearby enemy. So my thought on Wintertide Brand is you can easily use this to apply Bone Chill for like a Vortex build. And yeah, that seems pretty good. So a very easy way to activate Bone Chill. I'm sure it'll be good in its own right, but because it has a built-in chill, like built-in guarantee chill, you can put the brand on, then you don't have to have Bone Chill attached to your Vortex, and so you can have more damage things, and your Vortex will do a bunch more damage because of Bone Chill. So that's my thought on that. We'll see how it stands as a standalone skill or how it works as a standalone skill, but I think it'll definitely have utility regardless. Hey, how's it going? Adagive? Adagive, we'll go with that. How's it going, man? Arcanist Brand. This is just the one that allows you to trigger linked spells as brands. Yeah, just turns your spells into a brand. Pretty sick. Swift Brand Support. Supports brand skills, causing them to activate more frequently, but reducing their duration. And it sounds like you're going to have to summon brands a lot more frequently, and increased activation frequency is really nice. Once again, we'll have to see what the actual numbers are, because substantially reducing their duration could be a big problem, and I'm assuming it's reduced duration and not less duration, so you could probably easily counteract that with the tree or through threshold jewels. Hey, that is rare. Well, you know, I'm a linguist, let's say that. No, not really, but Lucky Shot. There you go. Earth Shatter. Slam the ground, sending out shockwaves that damage enemies and end in spikes. These spikes can be detonated by any slam attack or war cry. Works with maces, scepters, axes, staves, and unarmed. So yeah, it looks like this is specifically a skill that's meant to synergize with weaving war cries in with it. So the idea being you slam, you war cry. You probably want one of those shorter war cries, maybe a seismic cry or something. Or which is the one that had 2 exerting the next 2? Intimidating Cry? Yeah, so something like Intimidating Cry, which I assume because it only gives you, for the next 2 attacks, it's going to have a shorter cooldown, because all the war cries are going to have different cooldowns now. So yeah, just weave this in with some war cries more than likely. Fist of War supports slam attacks, ancestrally empowers the supporting attack with improved damage and area of effect. I saw this. Looks like it gives a pretty substantial amount of AoE. It's hard to say what the damage will be, but yep, we'll have the numbers when all the gems come out. I don't know if they'll have them in here or not. Reworked 3 war cry skills, Enduring Cry, Abyssal Cry, and which is now called Infernal Cry, and Rallying Cry. Added 14 new uniques, one of which was designed by a supporter, rebalanced 50 existing unique items, and not including the accommodations made for base type changes, which sounds like it's mostly for 2-handed weapons. Added 12 new div cards, designed by our supporters. How dare you go live without me? Hey man, I warned you. I warned you it could happen any time, and it did. But yeah, I had to wait for it to happen. I was sitting there with my stream ready to launch for like 2 hours before it actually got to the point where I could launch it. So Minor content and features. Alongside improvements made to Path of Exile's engine, we have changed the post-processing setting so that two specific ones are separately exposed, reducing the intensity of the new bloom effect and disabling blur effects such as those played when transitioning into or out of an incursion. Okay. Sounds like some techno garble to me, but hopefully that means performance will be improved. We've also improved how screen shake effects, such as those played on Critical Strike, are handled, toning down the wild variants, ensuring you can always still see the action. This new screen shake can be disabled in options if desired. Screen shake can be really funny. I don't know if you guys ever saw the video of the guy doing Glacial Hammer on an Immortal pack, and it just screen shook the whole thing, so he couldn't even see his character anymore. Beat ya? Hey, how's it going, guys? Should have been here? Yeah, it's your own fault, man. First? Oh, yeah. Yeah, Steven was in here really early. He's on top of that. Added 2 new Rogue Exiles, designed with the help of our talent competition winners. That's pretty sick. Always good to see new Rogue Exiles. You know, they're kind of a little bit of a footnote. Maybe these ones will be more dangerous and interesting. But yeah, Rogue Exiles aren't really a threat anymore and haven't been for quite some time. Added a new Labyrinth enchantment for both new and reworked skills. That's pretty sick. Kind of. I don't like farming lab, and there's already a lot of them, so I guess maybe I'll get lucky on a helmet and have more stuff to sell. Who knows? Improved the visual effects of a number of player and monster skills, including Earthquake, Firestorm, Ground Slam, Ice Crash, Creeping Frost, previously Arctic Breath. Hey, I just had a build that used Arctic Breath. I was going to put it out as a starter build, but now I'm glad I didn't. And actually, the utility that it served before can actually be done with Wintertide brand. But yeah, I guess we'll see what that looks like now. Perforate, all Warcry skills, Sunder, Molten Strike, Tectonic Slam, Incinerate, Arc, Herald of Ash, Arcane Cloak, Armageddon Brand, Orb of Storms, and Lightning Warp. So just a lot of visual effects. Updated the frames on passive skill hovers to the ones created for Path of Exile 2. Sick. All right, they're starting to implement that kind of stuff. In reality, I was here first. Don't you live with him? Shh. It counts. Crab Overlord.
That's me.
All hail. All hail the Crab Overlord. Let's see. Taunted enemies now have more visible effect played on them. That's useful because I never even knew taunts had a visible effect at all, honestly. Improved the behavior of pets playing their animations while deployed as hideout decorations. Updated the visual surge effect played when casting an elemental spell. Spells with this. Okay, so this is mostly visual things. Not really relevant to me. I'm not gonna... Ooh, never mind. Very relevant. Added more music to the list of hideout music options. The default music for any particular hideout is now indicated. Hey! Added some missing dialogue for Zana's missions. Ooh, that's interesting. Improved the Dragon Fireball visuals. Added an option to prevent other players from using your map device portals in... Ooh, that's huge. Alright. So now you don't have to worry about being scammed. So for those who didn't know, I did a video on this a while back, but if you had Kadiro Parandis in one of your maps and he was selling a high quality item or something, you know, you want to leave your map and go buy a bunch of Parandis coins. When you buy Parandis coins from people, sometimes what they'll do is they'll join your party. When you go to their hideout to make the trade, they will go to your hideout, try to enter your map device, and then proceed to steal your Kadiro, buy from him. So you can now prevent that. That's really big. That's very, very nice. And there was a bunch of other things people did that involved that as well, but that was the most prominent one. So yeah, this is a huge one. That's pretty sick. Carpets in Solaris Temple tile sets now align with the doors. Well, I guess for the more OCD of us, that is useful. I never noticed that was an issue to begin with, but improved how audio is handled for performance. That's huge because I can maybe turn my sounds back on now. I have a lot of my sounds currently disabled, set to 0, and yeah, it helped with performance, but maybe I won't have to now. continued to incrementally improve the sound, art, and effects and environments. Delirium mechanics added to the core game. This is good. I love Delirium. Outside of the performance issues, which the Vulkan engine kind of fixed mostly for me. But Delirium has been added to the core game. From the Torch Courts onwards, you'll have approximately 5% chance to encounter a mirror of Delirium in each area. Once you reach the Atlas, that chance will increase by a small amount for each other league, Atlas, or Master mechanic that appears in this area. In other words, if your goal is to encounter mirrors of Delirium, you're encouraged to use Zana modifiers, Master missions, sextants, and whatever else you have available to you. You'll now have a greater chance of finding cluster jewels through the Delirium encounters, proportionate to the number of rewards you earn during that encounter. I wish I would have played Delirium more, but my old PC was dying and just got my new PC like 3 weeks ago. Yeah, honestly speaking, man, even with a really nice PC, a lot of people were having performance issues. On a kind of busted PC, it was even worse. So, but yeah, basically, if you just, stuff your whole thing with, let's see, what can you do? Scarabs. You can maybe proc something with prophecies. You got your master missions, Zana modifiers. There's like a bunch of ways to do this. So if you really pump up your maps heavily, you'll have a higher chance of getting Delirium. And yeah, well, once we do hit the Deliriums, we'll get more cluster jewels overall, which is pretty nice. Alright, character balance. The Shikari Guided Power no longer makes you immune to poison. It now causes poisons on you to have 50% less duration and prevents you from being poisoned while there are at least 5 poisons on you, which means you can no longer basically completely mitigate the damage of the Hunter from the Conquerors of Atlas. So that's unfortunate. I guess maybe you just run a poison removal flask if you have room for it. Did Ball Lightning get buffed? I don't know yet, man. I'm still working my way through it, but it sounds like it did get buffed in the design manifesto, but slower projectiles got nerfed, which is probably going to end up as an overall nerf, but we'll have to see. Because I am probably going to play Ball Lightning totems. If it gets nerfed enough, I'm practicing Arc Totem just in case. Might end up doing that instead. But, Hexproof now acts like an immunity effect when gained, such as via Headhunter, and will remove any curses already present on you when gained. So here's the thing about this line right here. I know this doesn't sound like a big deal, but with Headhunter, which I personally don't play with Headhunter, I don't like it, but a lot of people really like Headhunter. And one of the ways they like to increase the buff duration of their Headhunter is they'll self-curse themselves with temporal chains, and then become functionally immune to the effect of temporal chains and kind of ignore it. So what this is going to be, or what this is going to mean, is when you kill a rare monster that has the hexproof, it will now remove temporal chains for you and reduce the duration of all of your other Headhunter buffs, and you won't be able to sustain the entire, like all your buffs throughout the entire map. That's actually a really huge build. Or a really huge idea. The reason I'm using totems and not mines, it's mostly for the playstyle, but also because I find it a little bit easier to boss with totems. And I like to do a lot of bossing in the early leagues, so like Exile and that kind of thing. So yeah, I like totems more, if I'm gonna be honest. Gonna go with brands. The playstyle looks nice. Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see how brands turn out. I mean, you won't be able to infinitely sustain them like you could before, but... Ooh, this is big too. Dual wielding no longer grants 20% more physical attack damage. It grants 10% more attack speed and 15% block chance. Block chance. So, yeah, that's really huge. Dual wielding has got a big nerf. 20% less damage is very substantial, so... that sucks for all these dual wielding melee builds. Will you be streaming a bit after the read? Had a question on totems, like your opinion. We'll see. My voice is probably, my voice isn't great right now, and by the time I get done reading all this, it probably won't be very good. So I can't imagine I will be, but we'll see. If I still feel okay, maybe I can pop in game for a little bit, but I'd say chances are low. Don't get your hopes up on that. Greater support for war cries has been added to the passive tree in the form of new and changed clusters and even a new keystone. War cries no longer share a cooldown by default. All war cries now have a base use time of 0.8 seconds, and their effects tend to linger for a greater duration. Their base cooldowns are now also longer. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty much what I thought was going to happen. Each war cry is enhanced by the proximity of enemies, and for some war cries, allies or corpses too. This is measured as power, with normal enemies providing 1 power, magic enemies providing 2, rare enemies providing 10, unique enemies providing 20, and players providing 5. All war cries also taunt enemies in range. So for those who saw the rework to the Berserker Ascendancy, it mentioned power. If you were wondering what that is, I kind of figured that's what it was. I thought it would have something to do with Warcry, but yeah, now you know. Warcries all now cause a certain number of attacks to become exerted after Warcry is used, except for Enduring Cry and General's Cry. However, the attacks done by General's Cry Mirage Warriors are exerted. Exerted attacks are enhanced in different ways depending on the Warcry. Your exerted attacks can benefit from the effects of multiple Warcries if the attack is, or if the type of attack is valid. Okay. So yeah, you can just spam war cries. They all have different cooldowns, so they're not gonna, using one won't put another one on cooldown. So technically you could just spam all the war cries, and then the exertions, it would be really awkward because they all have a different amount of exert stacks, like 2, 4, and 8 I think it was. But yeah, that's pretty interesting. Need to take a short break from reading and we'll get back into it. A sip of hot toddy and a little bit of vape. All right. Abyssal Cry, now Infernal Cry, taunts all nearby enemies to attack the user and exerts the next 4 melee attacks. It also covers the enemy in ash, slowing them and making them more vulnerable to fire damage, causing enemies to explode when they die, dealing fire damage in an area. Okay, that's really good. So 4 melee attacks. So if you're running a slow build, that's gonna, maybe be up to 4 packs. If you're one-shotting packs, covered in ash, that's a great mechanic. It's insanely good. And then exploding enemies, which is something, people will pay huge amounts of to get on chests. They'll go out of their way to get it on a lot of things. So yeah, it's looking pretty crazy. Exerted attacks trigger Combust, which converts 60% of physical damage to fire damage and deals 100% attack damage in an area at gem level 1, up to 158% at gem level 20. Wow. Okay, so you get it. Wait, so Infernal Cry is literally Chieftain in a bottle. It's Chieftain in a war cry. You're getting like covered in ash, you're getting physical to fire. It's actually just the Chieftain Ascendancy that you can put on any character now. Cool, neat. Excuse me. Now has a base duration of 5 seconds at gem level 1, up to 5.9 at gem level 20. Explosions from slain enemies deal fire damage equal to 8% of the monster's life. That's so much. Enemies covered in ash take 3% increased fire damage per power, up to 20%. Okay, so it's not going to be that effective against a small amount of enemies, but against a large amount, it'll be very powerful. The covered in ash now gains 1% increased area of effect for Infernal Cry per 1% gem quality. Now has a new gem icon. Yeah, that's really good. That's crazy. So this basically can just straight up replace an entire Ascendancy. You may as well just play Juggernaut, throw on Abyssal Cry, and then do whatever build you were going to do as far as your Chieftain. That seems really, really, really good. Like crazy, crazy good. All right, let's check out the other one, see if they stand up to that. Rallying Cry now taunts nearby enemies, exerts the next 5 melee attacks, gives nearby allies a buff based on the damage of the user's weapon. Now has a base duration of 5 seconds and then up to 5.9, which is the same. Okay, Buff grants added attack damage equal. Buff grants added attack damage equal to 3% of the damage in your main hand weapon per 5 power up to a maximum of 20%. Counts both allies and enemies in range for power. The buff has 100% more effect on your minions. Exerted attacks now deal 5% more damage per affected ally, up to 25%. Hey, a more damage multiplier on a Warcry too. And then it gets AoE. So, Herald of Purity builds, this could be really nice on. Or just a zombie build where you have like a Chober Chobber or whatever. Man. Yeah. Give me too much power? Yeah, war cries, I guess they had to make up for the fact we finally got good war cries this last setup. So, that looks pretty good too. I mean, you'd need a decent amount of minions to make it good because the way power worked, what was it? Players, okay. So I'm assuming the power gain counts for allies, but it doesn't have a special number for allies, it doesn't look like. So do your zombies, for instance, just count as normal? Yeah, I assume they just count as normal enemies. So if you have like, say, 7 zombies, you're just going to get 7 power, which is only going to give you 3% damage on that. So that doesn't seem that good. Oh, sorry, Ray. That's Jessica's chair. It's a little squeaky. It's all good. Enduring Cry now taunts all enemies attacks to near. Yeah, it taunts people. Gives a brief burst of life regeneration as well as a buff which grants resistances and physical damage reduction based on your endurance charges. Now has a base duration of 2 seconds. Now grants 1 endurance charge per 5 power up to with a minimum of 1 charge. So you're always going to get it. You can use it on 1 or on nothing. You can just use it at the beginning of map, get an endurance charge. That's kind of useful. Buff grants plus 2% to all resist and 2% physical damage reduction per endurance charge. Okay, so endurance charges already give physical damage reduction, and this is going to give you additional physical damage reduction. So this seems like if you're stacking, like, say, 7 endurance charges, I believe you get, like, what, 4% per? So that's already 28% physical damage reduction, and then you'd get another 14%. So 42% physical damage reduction. Hey, Felix, how's it going, man? Added in the Molten Strike tank build? Yeah. Yeah, Molten Strike with that Abyssal Cry. I mean, any kind of fire build with that. Tectonic Slam. Wait. If you really want to get the full benefit, you want to do this on a Slam build, which is Tectonic Slam, probably. I guess you could use it as a Chieftain with, like, Earthquake to get full fire conversion Earthquake, which would be pretty cool. Possibly get some big ignites or something. Now causes you to regenerate 120 life over 1 second at gem level 1 up to 1,976 at gem level 20. That's huge. So depending on the cooldown, it doesn't say the cooldown, does it? No. But
hello, friends.
Hey!
Welcome to Behind Eyes Gaming.
Raj, thank you for subscribing. Appreciate that, man, if you're here. But yeah, 1,976 regen over 1 second. That's quite a lot. So that's pretty good, and you can get 42% if you have like 7 endurance charges, 42% physical damage reduction off this. That seems pretty solid. So yeah, the war cries look great. Sunder now slams the ground, creating a slow wave of churning terrain that damage enemies in a sequence of areas in front of you. Enemies hit by the wave will release a damaging shockwave in an area around them. Using this skill again will stop the previous wave, requires a mace, scepter, axe, staff, or unarmed. The wave creates 5 areas and cannot stop before creating 2 areas. There's a delay between areas and a wave's created. The gem gains reduced delay between areas as it levels, up to 25% reduced delay between areas at gem level 20. The wave can cause a shockwave from up to 5 enemies. The wave gains +2 to the radius of each area in the sequence. Shockwave now deals 40% less damage. from 60%, and now gains more area of effect as the gem levels up to 19% at gem level 20. Okay, so it sounds like Sunder they're focusing on, like many things, making slow two-hander type things, but you can still use like a fast version of this. It'll just be really close range because you'll just be creating the two areas in front of you. Yeah. So, it's pretty cool. It sounds interesting. Sunder, while it used to be great, one of the best leveling skills and even viable in endgame, it's really fallen off over the last bunch of leagues. So hopefully this will put it in a better spot. Tectonic Slam no longer has a chance to consume endurance charges per attack to create a charged slam. Now consumes an endurance charge every third time you create a fissure, and gains 5% more damage, or 5% more area of effect, and 5% branching fissure chance per endurance charge. So it's every third time guaranteed. Wait, every third time you create a fissure. Okay. So I'm not really sure how that mechanic works. Is that just every third time you attack? Oh well. The spreading fissures has been partially normalized, ensuring both sides of the main fissures will get at least one branching fissure. Now deals base damage and has added damage effectiveness of 180% at gem level 1 from 170% and 220% at gem level 20 from 200%. So decent amount of increased damage. And yeah, they added base damage, so that's pretty good. Tech Slam already felt pretty good in late game. It's going to feel a whole lot better, it seems like. Skill balance, mana cost. Skills whose costs are reduced to 0 are now shown to have mana cost of 0 to differentiate them from skills which do not have a mana cost, such as Vol skills. Brands have had their detached duration reduced, and these durations are no longer refreshed by brand recall. New brand playstyles are now supported through the new passive tree clusters, keystones, and support gems, as well as a suite of new brand skills. And when an enemy dies with the brand attached, the brand will return to its original position, wherever it appeared when it was first cast, or recalled position. So, what that means is brands are now totems. Yep, that's what I'm gonna say, because they're not gonna just chain from enemy to enemy unless the enemies are already kind of consolidated around where you initially cast or recalled it. So they're not just gonna jump around all across the map anymore. You're gonna have to recast them at least occasionally, because you're not gonna constantly refresh them with brand recall. We'll have to see what kind of duration is available from the tree when we get to see the tree. But yeah, as far as I'm concerned right now, brands have become totems. As weird as that is, that seems to be the case. Slams. A number of existing skills are now tagged as slam skills, which determine whether or not they're affected by supports, passives, and modifiers to slam skills. The existing slams, which are now considered slam skills, are Ground Slam, Vol Ground Slam, Leap Slam, Ice Crash, Earthquake, Vol Earthquake, Sunder, Ancestral Warchief, Tectonic Slam, Perforate, Doriani's Touch, and Consecrated Path. I'm kind of excited about the Ancestral Warchief because of the new never mind. Yeah, I was right. It was the new Chieftain notive, or the new Chieftain Ascendancy, which activates when you use slam skills. So basically double attacks every 2 seconds. I was wondering if you could use that with a War Chief. I didn't know if it would be a slam skill, but I guess so. Doriani's Touch, eh? I don't like Leap Slam, though, for the same reason, because it'll activate when you use that. And, I mean, it has Slam in its name, so it's not too surprising, I suppose. Made improvements to Totem AI for skills that have some sort of prerequisite for use, such as Blades for Blade Blast or Corpses for Detonate Dead. Alright. Detonate Dead Totems is on the table. Arcane Cloak now has a mana cost of 0 rather than costing no mana. Arctic Breath is now Creeping Frost. There was an error which caused Arctic Breath to not correctly inherit damage penalties from gems like greater multiple projectile supports after gem level 1. We fixed this and to compensate the damage and have compensated the damage accordingly. Now deals 11 to 16 cold damage at gem level 1 unchanged, up to 383 to 572 at level 20, from 301 to 450. And now deals 16.7 base cold damage per second, unchanged, to 1,391.2 at gem level 20 from 1,383.5. That seems like a pretty underwhelming change to me, if we're going to be honest. So they fixed an error that made it potentially strong because it could get GMP without a negative damage multiplier, and they gave it a very, very, very minor damage buff. So not a big fan of that. Armageddon brand now activates every 0.75 seconds while attached from 0.8, so more activation frequency. Pretty good. Now deals 34 to 51 fire damage at gem level 1 from 29 to 43, up to 398 to 597 at level 20 from 332 to 498. That's actually a really big buff. It gains 100 top end damage. That's really, really good. Now has an added damage effectiveness of 85. Now deals 120% more damage with ignites at gem level 1 unchanged, up to 250% more at gem level 20, from 180. Now has a detached duration of 6 seconds from 10. Now has a base area of effect radius of 22 units from 18. Wow. Okay. So I said brands are now totems, which I still think is true, but at least Armageddon brand is a really, really good totem. Like, that's a huge buff. That's really solid. It looks really strong right now. All right, Ball Lightning. Hey, this is very relevant to me. Now deals 3 to 57 lightning damage at level 1 from 3 to 48, and 28 to 533 at level 20 from 22 to 426. So once again, 100 top end damage. So unless slower projectiles is absolutely nerfed into the ground, this is actually really good. This one's huge. Now has an added damage effectiveness of 50% from 40%. I know that doesn't seem like that much, but Ball Lightning's base damage is kind of low, but it hits really frequently, especially if you have slower projectiles. So a lot of the way you would scale the damage is by getting extra added damage from various sources, usually from wands or from your abyss jewels, that kind of thing. Yeah, that's really crazy. Now costs 12 mana at gem level 1 from 13 and 23 from 25. That's not huge, but I guess it's a welcome little addition. Bear Trap now has an added damage effectiveness of 260% from 200%. I mean, traps are a thing, I guess. So maybe that'll be used. Body Swap improved the targeting behavior of triggered Body Swap when nothing was targeted. Now prioritizes corpses if there are any near your targeted location. Cool. I didn't personally use Body Swap, but yeah, AI improvements are definitely something I'm always interested in. No longer refreshes brand recall. No longer refreshes the duration of recalled brands. Now spends 20% of each recalled brand's mana cost to activate them when they're recalled. 20% of each. So that's basically like recasting the brand if you have 5 brands, for instance. Now has a cooldown of 4 seconds from 3. Now gains up to 40% cooldown recovery speed at gem level 6 from 50%. So brand recall got nerfed real hard. They really want to make us change up the play style of brands, which I think is fine. Cyclone no longer makes you immune to stun while channeling. I guess you'll have to get stun immunity on your Cycloner, because it's going to feel really bad when you're just like zooming through a map holding down your right click to Cyclone, and all of a sudden you're just stunned and you just stop and you're still holding the button and you're just stuck in place. It's going to feel really bad. So but there are plenty of ways to get stun immunity, so that's not that big of a deal. Maybe you'll see more Cyclone Juggernauts, who knows? Real quick break again. All right, Dual Strike. Now deals base damage and has added damage effectiveness of 125 unchanged to 190 at 20 from 170. Actually, the Dual Strike Threshold jewel that they revealed looked really cool. It gives you crit multi if you're holding a dagger and free melee splash if you're holding a mace. So it kind of incentivizes you to hold one mace and one dagger to get some benefit, which looked really interesting. And free melee splash might actually make it somewhat viable, maybe. And crit multi is always, of course, very important. Might try a dual strike assassin at some point. Not right away, because getting good weapons will be hard as a league starter, but maybe my second or third character might give that a shot. Earthquake. Aftershocks no longer have added physical damage. Aftershocks now deal 150% more damage with hits and ailments. Can now be used when unarmed. And base radius of the initial hit is now 14 units from 18. Ooh. That's a kind of small radius. 14 is really kind of tiny. Earthquake required a lot of area scaling. Looks like it didn't quite get there. That being said, unarmed, you can hollow palm technique Earthquake now, and the aftershocks deal a bunch of more damage, so that could be some pretty crazy boss killing right there. Some hollow palm technique. Of course, you'll miss out. Well, it doesn't matter. Hollow palm technique gives a bunch of flat damage anyway, so yeah, that could be a thing. Fireball now has added damage effectiveness of 240% from 180%. No longer gains additional explosion radius as the gem levels up. I think that'll probably be due to the threshold jewel, but I haven't seen that one yet. I don't know if they released it. Now gains additional explosion radius based on the distance the projectile has traveled as the gem levels up from +9 at gem level 20, and now gains 1% increased projectile speed per 1% quality, and it was previously 0.5% chance to ignite per 1% gem quality. So I guess that's a buff for Fireball. Yeah, that's a lot of damage effectiveness. 240 is quite a lot. So yeah, we'll see how that works out. Fireball wasn't a bad skill to begin with, so any kind of buffs. But yeah, the explosion radius was free. You could get it point blank now. Now you'll have to shoot maybe from a little farther away. Firestorm now deals 7 to 11 fire damage from 4 to 11, and now has a damage effectiveness of 45% from 30%. It's a kind of small buff, and it's only really a buff early on. It's gonna make it a lot more consistent, and it's actually 4 to 7 as a bottom end is actually pretty big when you're doing a lot of small hits. And yeah, the damage effectiveness is nice too. Firestorm kind of needed a buff, I think, and it got there. Freezing Pulse now has an added damage effectiveness of 200% from 150%. Hey, Freezing Pulse was already pretty great, and just making it a little better. Frostbolt now has an added damage effectiveness of 220% from 160%. Man, I love Frostbolt, so these are really, I'm really happy with a lot of these changes. A lot of cool stuff being buffed. Ground Slam no longer has added attack physical damage. Using that for Totem? Yeah, sick. Freeze Pulse Totem is a classic, man. It's really good. I included it as one of the ones you could use for a starter build. It's really strong. Yeah, it's really, really good. I mean, you kind of need the threshold jewels, but it's definitely worth it. It's great clear. It's a pretty good single target. Not bad, not great, but pretty good. And actually, it'll just be much better now. So whatever practicing you did with Freeze Pulse Totem, it's just going to feel a little bit better now. Ground Slam now deals base damage and has added damage effectiveness of 115% at gem level 1 from 95% and 150% at gem level 20 from 125%. No longer tagged as a physical gem. Interesting. Okay. But, well, now deals base damage, though. I don't know what that means. I'm not really sure. So are they just going to add like a bottom end of damage? I'm going to have to see exactly what that means when the gems come out. But what I think that means is rather than having an added attack physical damage top to bottom end, they just add a bottom end, maybe? We'll see. Because, yeah, that was mentioned earlier. But Herald of Purity no longer grants added physical damage with spells and attacks. Now grants 9% more physical damage at gem level 1, up to 12% more physical damage at gem level 20. That's not a huge amount of more multiplier, but I guess it's not bad for 25%. Like if we compare it to Wrath, which I believe goes up to like what 18% more lightning damage, or yeah, actually that's pretty good for 25%. Now, the added physical damage was really, really useful for keeping a consistent amount of damage, and Face Breakers definitely wanted that for obvious reasons. So that's going to be kind of bad for some builds, but I think that's a fairly substantial amount of more damage for a 25% mana reservation. So Herald of Purity looks pretty good now, but really bad for some builds, I guess, too. Herald of Thunder no longer has a 0.4 second cooldown on the storm repeatedly striking the same enemy. Now favors striking enemies that have been struck fewer times. Now deals... Okay, I want to talk about that for a second. So it no longer has a 0.4... So potentially, it can... If there's just one enemy and you just killed a bunch of mobs and you shock them, it can just spam the single target. So the lightning strike will do a lot of single target damage potentially now if you clear out like extra boss mobs that they summon or something, is what I think I understand about that. Now deals 1 to 31 lightning damage at level 1 from 1 to 34, so little nerf, up to 23 to 1108 from 27 to 1303, and now has an added damage effectiveness of 100% from 120%. So yeah, like auto bombers are going to be a little bit weaker, I think. That's pretty much the only thing that I really am getting from that, because, well, the buff doesn't seem to have gotten worse. And yeah, I guess it won't clear like random enemies as easily. But a lot of people use Herald of Ice more for that anyway from the explosions. So Ice Crash no longer has added cold damage, now converts 100% of physical damage to cold damage from 50%. Hey, that's pretty cool. Now deals base damage and has an added damage effectiveness of 230% at gem level 1 from 190% up to 280% at level 20 from 240%. Second stage now deals 15% less damage from 10%. Third stage now deals 30% less damage from 20%. That's pretty cool. Yeah. So a lot of extra damage effectiveness, and which they're trying to get you to use higher base damage weapons a la two-handers. But the most interesting thing for me is now it's always 100% conversion, which is great because now you don't have to invest in conversion anymore, which is pretty sick. Ice Trap now has an added damage effectiveness of 200% from 150%. That's pretty good. Ice Trap wasn't bad. I tested Ice Trap this last league. It felt pretty good. Underwhelming compared to a lot of builds, but still pretty good. So it's good that it's getting better. They're just doing a lot of added damage effectiveness buffs across the board, it looks like. Infernal Blow now converts 60% of physical damage to fire damage from 50%. I'm sure there's a good reason for that, but I don't know what it is. Maybe there's a unique that converts 40% of physical damage to fire damage that you might be able to use from Infernal Blow, but yeah, that doesn't seem like... That seems a little weird to me, but hey, whatever. Lightning Trap now has an added damage effectiveness of 170% from 135%. Lightning Trap was already a great leveling skill you could use to level quick, so that's pretty cool. Now has an Lightning Spire Trap, got nerfed in its damage effectiveness, one of the few. Ray. Right now, it's Ball Lightning Totem is my favorite. I've been practicing a bunch of them, but we'll have to see how the slower projectiles, which is... Wait, I don't see slower projectiles on. Oh, The support gems are going to be different. Uh, Anyone know if Infernal Cry works with Ice Crash? I believe Ice Crash is a slam, so it should. So Infernal Cry, I don't know how the conversion would work. I assume that since it's an innate to the skill, the ice conversion would take precedence, I would assume, but I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, I feel like there would be anti-synergy with Abyssal Cry because you wouldn't benefit from the cover in Ash. So yeah, it seems like it would be actually pretty bad, honestly, to use those two together. Magma Orb now has an added damage effectiveness of 185% from 140%. Now chains 2 times at gem level 1 from 1 time, up to 3 times at gem level 20 from 2 times. And now deals 9 to 12 fire damage at gem level 1, unchanged, to 856 to 1,284 at gem level 20, from 716 to 1,073. That's a huge amount of base damage, by the way. Now gains base radius at gem levels from up to +4 to radius at gem level 20. And Gloomfang, the Amulet Gloomfang, the Threshold Jewel for Magma Orb now basically functions as a mini Gloomfang, but it gives you less damage to compensate. You could also use it with a Gloomfang. That's really, 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 really big. Magma Orb might be crazy. It might actually be really crazy. That's fair. Well, the exerts will have less effect, but the explosion should still be useful, right? I think the explosion will still be useful. Yeah. Yeah, they don't have to be hit by fire damage or anything. So yeah, you'd literally just mostly be using it for the explosion, which is fine. Explosions are great. People invest pretty heavily for those, but yeah, it doesn't seem that great to me. Molten Strike now deals base damage and there's that base damage again, and has an added damage effectiveness of 110% at gem level 1 from 120 up to 148% at gem level 20 from 139. So it looks like Molten Strike's going to start off a little bit weaker, unless that base damage is actually, what I think it is, which is just a lower end damage. And it'll get stronger as it levels up, which is pretty good. Orb of Storms now has an added damage effectiveness of 65% from 70%. An arrow which caused Orb of Storm's strike frequency to benefit doubly from increased cast speed was fixed, which has affected the balance of the skill, particularly for high cast speed builds. A lot of people were using this for racing because of that. So yeah, I guess Orb of Storms racing is off the table. Some people have probably been practicing leveling, and that might affect that. Perforate now deals base damage and has added damage effectiveness of 125% at gem level 1 from 140% up to 170% at gem level 20 from 196%. Oh, you're saying that you say that's a buff? Oh, that the racers won't be able to race as hard with their Orb of Storms. They'll still find a way, but Orb of Storms was definitely a big racing thing. And yeah, I think a lot of people knew about the double strike frequency from cast speed. Unfortunate. Base damage is set amount, then 110% is on top of that. That's what I thought. That's what I thought they meant by base damage. Yeah, Molten Strike's yeah, that's what I thought it was, but it's hard to say without seeing the gems. So yeah, the base damage is getting added to a lot of things. This also deals base damage. And yeah, lower damage effectiveness at low levels, and then well, at higher levels as well. But the base damage should counteract that nerf to damage effectiveness. Perforate now has 2 to 3 added physical attack damage at gem level 1 up to 75 to 113 at gem level 20. Previously had no damage. Now creates 7 spikes from 6. Now creates 2 additional spikes if you changed stances recently. Now deals 75% less damage while in blood stance from 65. And now gains more area of effect while in sand stance as the gem levels up to 76% more at gem level 20. Yeah, perforate looks like it could be really strong. I've tested it recently and it felt really weak. So hopefully the added physical damage, which seems pretty substantial, as well as the additional spike for better area, will actually be quite good. Purifying Flame has an added damage effectiveness of 180% from 140%. I actually have used this in my... I've used Purifying Flame recently to start leveling. It's a little slow. Hopefully maybe this will bring it in line, but you don't really get a lot of added damage early on anyway, so that shouldn't be a thing. Based on the wiki, the conversion from skill gems takes priority over conversion from other sources, so that means Infernal Cry will instead shatter monsters for me as well with Ice Crash. No, it'll still do fire damage. I don't think that's true, Keith. It could potentially make it more OP than they intended. That's true. It definitely could. Stormbrand now has a base critical strike chance of 6% from 5.5%. Now has an added damage effectiveness of 30% from 40%. Now activates every 0.5 seconds instead of 0.6 seconds. And now has a detached duration of 6 seconds from 10. So they kind of buffed it up a little bit, giving it a little more crit and activation frequency at the expense of less damage effectiveness. And of course, the whole change to brands in general, which turns them into totems. So, yeah, we'll see how Stormbrand works. But yeah, I don't think Infernal Cry will shatter. It'll, I don't think so. Let me double check that. But yeah, I don't think that's the case. Yeah, no, it's still gonna do fire damage in the area regardless. So. And deals 100%. Oh, I get what you mean. The exert. Yeah. I don't see why it wouldn't. Yeah, okay, that's what you meant. Ah, I see. Yeah, I think you're right on that. I misunderstood what you meant. I thought you meant the explosions would do ice damage, which I don't know why I thought that. But Summon Holy Relic now has a base crit chance of 5% on its Nova skill. Previously erroneously had 0%. Alright. I don't know. I'm sure there's some niche that will be that'll be beneficial for. Static Strike now deals base damage and has added damage effectiveness of 110 from 107 and 150 from 160. Base duration of 2 seconds from 4 seconds. Ooh. The whole good thing about Static Strike was that it had a long duration, so you could smack something and run around for a long time. But let's read the rest before we judge it too harshly. Now converts 50% of physical damage to lightning damage from 60%. I guess you just use Fizz to lightning anyway, maybe, but no longer causes beams to deal 60% less damage while stationary and 40% less damage while moving. Hey! Beams now deal 40% less damage at all gem levels. Well, never mind. There goes my hay. No longer creates a stacking buff and no longer gains 10% increased beam frequency per buff stack. Beams now hit enemies every 0.4 seconds at gem level 1 down to 0.32 at gem level 20 from 0.4 at all gem levels. I think the reason this change was made, I think there was some support build that used Static Strike and took some insane advantage of it, but yeah, for people who just want to play Static Strike as a regular build, this seems like a really, really, really big nerf, unfortunately. Wave of Conviction now has added damage effectiveness of 220% from 160%. Gotta stay hydrated? Yeah, I'm a little thirsty. I've been nursing my drink a little bit. I should have maybe gotten water as well. But I'll just... Oh yeah, thank you. There you go. Hey, how's it going, Christian? Not too much, just going over the changes here. We're a ways into the patch notes. Man, we've already been on for an hour. Well, I'll have to start speeding up a little bit because I don't want to disturb the neighbors late at night. So, Vol Earthquake, base attack speed 75% to match Earthquake from 100%. Now has added damage effectiveness of 60 from 50 to 71 from 61. So, yep, same thing, buffing damage effectiveness. Vol Fireball gets damage effectiveness of 240, gains additional explosion radius as it levels up. Same thing with Fireball, it gains explosion radius as it travels, and projectile speed. Same, yeah, the exact same buffs as Fireball. Vol Ground Slam looks like damage effectiveness of 190 to 300% from 185 to 227%, and its base attack speed now matches Ground Slam. Vol Lightning Trap now has 170 from 135 damage effectiveness. It's the same. Oh, okay. Here's the one we wanted to talk about. Vol Molten Shell now grants 25% additional armor at level 1 from 60 up to 429 at level 20 from 1030. Now grants 20% more armor at gem level 1 up to 29% more armor at gem level 20. Now causes 30% of damage taken from hits to be taken from the buff before your life or energy shield at gem level 1 from 35 up to at level 20 from 80% at all levels. Ooh. The buff can now take damage equal to 30% of your armor from 60% up to a maximum of 30,000, which is a lot, obviously. Now reflects 300% of damage taken from the buff as fire damage each second when the buff expires or is depleted at gem level 1, up from 100% up to 9,000 at gem level 20 from 3,000. Now removes and is removed by other guard skills. So they made it mostly scale with builds that already stack armor by lowering the flat armor it gives. They made it take substantially less percentage-wise of the hits that you're taking. It's basically just 30% damage mitigation, which is, but yeah, that's a pretty high amount of armor or amount of shield that it can gain. And then they moved some of the power to the reflect, which I guess gives it a little bit, because 9,000% is a huge amount. Like just a crazy amount of damage reflect, especially when you're reflecting 30%. Or 30,000. I'm sure somebody's going to figure out some crazy way to take advantage of that. Archmage now gains added lightning equal to 70% of mana cost, up to 108% from 127%. That's it. Small nerf to Archmage. Shockwave now gains additional uses as it levels up to 4 at gem level 20. Now deals 160% of base damage at gem level 1 up to 260%, so just another base damage buff. Supported skills. Oh, slower projectiles. Here's the one that's really important for me. Supported skills now have 20% less projectile speed at gem level 1 from 30% up to 30% from 49%. Ooh, I mean, that's a pretty big nerf to Ball Lightning. I don't know. I mean, that's pretty big. Like, that's a substantial amount of... Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see how it feels, because Ball Lightning got a big base damage buff and a big damage added, or effective damage added buff as well. So it might make up for it, but I'm going to have to test it. I'm probably going to try Ball Lightning support or Ball Lightning totems, but I'll keep Arc as a backup just in case it doesn't work out so well with the new slower projectiles. All right, passive. We wanted to add supports for mechanics that have been added in the past few years that as of yet have not had adequate supports with the tree. This includes Rage, Unleash, Corpse Manipulation, War Cries, Heralds, and Banners. Many passive skill clusters offered the same thing as other clusters, with the only difference being the location on the tree and the number of passive skills on the cluster. In this patch, we've endeavored to give each cluster its own identity and function. Interesting. Okay, so Timeless Jewel Keystone passives have become a popular feature among many builds, but are prohibitively difficult to acquire, especially without trade. We moved some of the most build-defining Keystones out of the Timeless Jewels into... Okay, so we already knew that. Agnostic, Glancing Blows, Supreme Ego, Wind Dancer, and Eternal Youth are now on the skill tree. Lower end was 49%. Nope, it's not. It's not a buff at all. For Ball Lightning, we want even slower projectiles. The slower the projectiles, the better. Slower projectiles with Ball Lightning got really nerfed with that, unfortunately. So it sounds like a buff for any non-Ball Lightning build, but Ball Lightning depended very heavily on slower projectiles. So, yeah, that's a nerf. That's a nerf for my build, personally. But, yeah, for other projectile builds, you could feasibly potentially use it for the more damage. But yeah, Ball Lightning, that's a huge nerf. We also wanted to reduce the power of some clusters that were overly efficient. Increase the power of clusters that were inefficient. Ultimately, the passive tree should provide more interesting choices regardless of your build. Awesome, I can't wait to see the new skill tree. Due to the volume of changes on the past tree, we won't be listing each change. You can check out the new version of the tree yourself here. So I'm going to check that out later. I'm not going to check that out on stream. Maybe I'll do a video on it talking about it, but yeah, I don't have too much time here, so I'm going to try to jump through here. Yeah, big nerf. Yeah, I'm still going to try it too, Ray. But once, yeah, I'll just have Arc as a backup, and I'll do Arc Totems instead. So Necromancer Corpse Pack now has an upper limit on increase to cast speed per corpse consumed recently to 200%. Apparently this is because you could increase, because brand frequency increases based on cast speed, you could use Corpse Pact to create using the Arcane brand to infinitely create and consume corpses, and it would ramp up its own brand frequency, which would make it consume corpses faster, basically creating an infinite cast speed brand. So that's the reason they made that change, for anybody who doesn't know about that. Towoa Forest Strength has moved and is no longer a prerequisite for Valaco Storm's Embrace. Is now been redesigned and now grants level 20 Towoa's chosen skill, which is triggered when you use a slam attack, creating an image which mirrors your slam attack. The skill has a short cooldown, so it's been confirmed that this extra slam, which is basically 100% more damage, is a 2-second cooldown, which seems pretty long for this kind of thing, but I mean, who wouldn't take 100% more damage every 2 seconds, especially on a slower attacking build? I think it'll still be taken for those who do choose to go Chieftain with slam skills. New small passive leads to Towoa Forest Strength. It grants 10% increased area of effect and 0.5 regen. Valaco Storm's Embrace no longer grants 3% more damage for each endurance charge lost recently, up to 15%. Instead, it grants 15% more damage for 8 seconds when you lose or consume any endurance charges. This is actually pretty big, especially with the new Tectonic Slam, where you're basically guaranteed to lose an endurance charge every 3 attacks, which will help you maintain your endurance charges more easily with that as well. The small passive leading to Valaco Storm's Embrace no longer grants 15% increased endurance charge duration. It now grants 5% chance to gain an endurance charge on kill. So yeah, I guess that's useful. You could get a little bit of endurance charge on kill. That's nice. Berserk Warbringer has been redesigned. It now causes war cries to grant 5 rage per 5 power if you have less than 25 rage, and causes them to sacrifice 25 rage if you have at least 25 rage. It also causes exerted attacks to deal 50% more damage if a war cry sacrificed rage recently. So yeah, I guess it's another way besides Berserk to utilize your rage. Like, you'll get up to a certain point, get the benefits from your rage, then you'll sack all that rage off and just do a bunch of extra damage. 50% more damage, which really is a bunch of extra damage. That's a lot. Very, very powerful. Which means Berserker now has 2 huge more damage multipliers on its tree. So Berserker could be even stronger than it already was if you're doing like some war cries with them. That could be pretty crazy. The small passive leading to Warbringer no longer grants 20% increased Warcry duration. It now grants 20% increased Warcry speed. Hierophant, Sign of Purpose, has been redesigned. It now causes Brand to have 100% more activation frequency in the final 25% of their attached duration. It caused Recall Brands to have 100% increased cooldown recovery speed. So I guess if you are going to be using Brand Recall, this will be somewhat mandatory because 100% increased cooldown recovery speed is pretty huge. I think it got moved to 4 seconds, so that'll drop it down to 2 seconds cooldown, which is, pretty reasonable. Especially considering now when your brands deattach, they go back to wherever they were recalled last. So, yeah, I think that'll be a pretty big deal for if you are going to do a brand build. Lab Helm Enchants grant reduced earthquake duration can no longer be obtained, though existing versions will be unaffected. That's unfortunate because that is the one I like to use for ease of use. Lab Helm Enchants that granted Charge Slam for Tectonic Slam can no longer be obtained. Existing versions of this enchant now grant extra chance for branching fissures. Helm Enchants that granted increased Rallying Cry buff effect now grant less buff effect and can no longer be obtained. This affects all existing items with this enchantment. Lab enchants that gave increased Rallying Cry duration now grant less Rallying Cry duration, 30 to 45 to 10 to 15%, and can no longer be obtained. Lab Helm enchants that granted. Okay, so they're just changing a bunch of the. I don't want to go through all of these right now. Essence of Hysteria on boots will now drop Burning Ground every 10 units from 25. So yeah, that just increases the frequency. So if you want to use Essence of Hysteria boots for leveling, I don't know if people still do that, but can do that. Added 13 new ring anoints that utilize the new indigo oil. Due to the removal of some notable passives, some existing anointed amulets may now have new notables on them. So basically, amulets previously anointed with Battle Cry now have Admonisher. Those with Words of Glory have Natural Authority. Don't know what those are, but added new Elder Slayer Influence modifier to several slots. The Hunter Influenced Ring modifier that grants faster start of energy shield recharge is now instead found on Redeemer Influenced Rings. Existing items with this modifier are unaffected. All right, now we get to the real potatoes, real meat and potatoes. But I need to take a short break for my voice to have some more whiskey and vape. What's that?
It's a little bit warm still.
It is better warm. Yeah. Fake potatoes? That's blasphemy. Yeah. Alright, two-handed weapons. We've reviewed all two-handed weapon based types and adjusted their attack damage, speed, and implicits, with the goal of having two-handed weapon builds a different feel to their dual-wield and one-handed counterparts, and to ensure that the damage you gain by using two-handers made up for the lack of block and slower attack speed. All two-handed weapons have their base damage increased by at least 15%, with axes in particular gaining even more damage. Wait, does it come in effect? And has he mentioned Cyclone? It comes into effect in like 3 days here, and Cyclone, the only change to Cyclone is that you can now be stunned while cycloning, which means you'll have to get some sort of stun immunity probably, otherwise it's going to feel pretty bad. War Staves, Enzymite Staff, base crit is now 7.3% from 7%. Now grants 20% block chance from 18%. That's a pretty big buff. Maelstrom Staff now has a base crit chance of 6.8 from 6.5 and 25% block chance from 20%. 25 is a pretty large number. No problem, dude. Judgment Staff, base crit 6.5 from 6.3, now grants 20% spell block from 18% attack block. So yeah, now they have a staff specifically for spell block, which is also really cool. So I like all those changes. And 15% more damage on all those base types as well, seems like. Yeah, huge buff. That's pretty cool. Two-handed maces. Morningstar implicit area effect is now 15% AoE from 4%. That's a huge buff. Solar mace, exact same thing. 15% from 4%. Cruy Maul. Base attacks per second is now 1 from 1.1. Implicit now grants 45% stun duration from 30%. So Cruy Maul is even slower. Colossus Maul, base attack is 1.3 from 1.2, base crit is 5.5, implicit now grants 30% increased area damage. So that's a huge buff to Colossus Mallet. Pile Driver, base attack is 1.35 from 1.3 and 20% reduced enemy stun threshold. Meat Grinder now grants 5% chance to deal double damage with hits from this weapon. That's cool. Stacking double damage is always pretty neat. Imperial Maul is 1.1 attacks per second from 1.2. Implicit now grants 10% increased strength. Ooh, I like that. Terror Maul, base attacks 1.15 from 1.25. 1.15 from 1.25. Base crit is 6% from 5%. Implicit now grants 25% chance to double stun duration. And Corona Maul is 1.2 attack speed from 1.25 and 20% area from 6. Not tried two-handed, only started about 7 weeks ago and I can stop playing. Play Duelist Sword Cyclone. Two-handed, this might be the league to do it because they really nerfed dual wielding. It lost its 20% more damage, which is pretty big. Alright. Two-handed axes. Karui Chopper is 1.05 attack speed from 1.15 base. Sundering Axe, base attack speed is 1.3 from 1.25. Implicit now causes hits with this weapon to have plus 20% damage over time multiplier with bleeding. Hey, bleed multi, that's pretty cool. Mace got a lot of love. Yeah, I like a lot of those changes. Really big. I really like that Sundering Axe too. That's pretty sick. Enzymite Axe is 1.35 base attack speed from 1.3 and 5.7 base crit from 5. I really like how they're bringing up the base crit from some of these two-handed weapons. It felt pretty underwhelming with anybody but Slayer going crit two-handed, so I think this is going to help a lot. Volax is 1.15 base attack from 1.2. Implicit now gives attacks with this weapon 25% chance to maim on hit. Free maim is very welcome. Despot Axe is now 1.4 attack speed from 1.3, and Void Axe now has a base crit of 6% from 5%. So yeah, anybody who's tried playing crit two-handed before with anything but a Slayer, it doesn't feel great. A lot of these base crit chances going up is really going to help that. So that feels nice. Two-handed swords. Implicits that granted 30% global accuracy rating now give 45% increased global accuracy rating, and the 45% accuracy rating ones go up to 60%. Reaver Sword has a 1.5 base attack speed from 1.45. It gives 60% global accuracy. Enzymite Blade is 1.4% or 1.4 attacks per second from 1.35. Base crit 6.5 from 5%, and implicit now grants 25% global crit multi. We have a new champion for two-handed crit swords. Enzymite Blade is where it's at. Holy shit. That's really good. That's really crazy. All right. I like that a lot. That's a huge buff. Vol Greatsword. Implicit now gives attacks with this weapon plus 470 accuracy. So some flat accuracy. Pretty nice. Lion Sword, 1.45 attacks per second from 1.4. Implicit now grants 50 to strength and dexterity. That's pretty interesting. I like that. Some flat attributes on a weapon. That's definitely never been done before. Infertile Sword. Implicit now gives this attacks with this weapon 30% increased elemental damage. So yeah, they're really giving a unique identity to all these two-handers. I like it. Exquisite Blade, base crit 5.7 from 6, but its implicit now gives 50% global crit multi from 60%. So they actually nerfed Exquisite Blade. Enzymite Blade, is that a lower type or a lower tier? It might be. Maybe that's why it's so good. Maybe it's because it'll have lower base damage than something like, say, the Exquisite Blade, which was the go-to before. Still might be, but it did actually get nerfed a little bit. Lots of cluster jewel balance, but they don't really give. It's just a list. I'm not going to read off the list. If you want to read that, you can do it yourself. Unique balance due to the damage increase given to two-handed weapon base types. We've adjusted the damage on a number of two-handed unique weapons. Existing versions of all these weapons will be updated to the below values if you use a divine. Okay. So I'm not going to read all these because it would just be me listing off a bunch of numbers, but it looks like a lot of them have had their damage ranges nerfed. Let's see if there's any. Like, we have Calm Supremacy, the Dancing Dervish, Namahu's Flame, Moroi Urki, and I think that's because their base damage is going to be higher and they didn't want them to be overtuned. The interesting thing about this is it might make it so rares are going to be a lot better, because I don't think so far we haven't seen like the mods that can roll on two-handers being lower. So we might see rares actually substantially outpacing uniques earlier than usual. But Moroi Urki, Kitava's Feast, Nerf, Kingmaker, Void Forge, Doomsower. Have any of these actually been increased? Kondo's Pride, Terminus Est, Sinvicta's Metal, Adziri's Disfavor, ooh, yeah, Disintegrator, and Hegemony's Era. Okay. So it looks like they just brought the numbers down to make up for the increases in the base types, which is okay. So they should probably be roughly about the same damage as they were before. A lot of those uniques, weirdly enough. Other unique items. Oh man, there's so many of these.
Oh god.
Alright guys, I can skip the bug fixes for sure. Oh, we're close enough to done. Yeah, longest patch notes ever? I don't think so. You know what, we're gonna power through this. It's 9:30, but yeah, we're gonna power through it because we're close to the end. Envy granted by United in Dream, All's Uprising, and the Elder mod suffix now grants 75% more added chaos damage to attacks and spells. Its radius has been increased to 14%. I'm just gonna go see if there are any that I'm personally interested in. Honestly, you guys can look through. Ooh, here's the best one. Bitter Dream. No longer supports socketed gems at level 1 Mana Leech. Now supports socketed gems with level 1 Bone Chill. This does not affect existing versions of this item. Hey, Bitter Dream. Oh yeah, I haven't done a Bitter Dream build in a long time. Maybe we're bringing it back. Bone Chill. Bone Chill is pretty good. I could see that being useful with some things. So Apep's Rage. Oh, this one's interesting because it affects Archmages. No longer increases the mana cost of skills by 40%. Instead, it now grants plus 40 to the mana cost of skills. Existing versions are unaffected by these changes. So that'll be interesting. I do use Arborix sometimes, but that's a wall of text. I'm not going to read that right now. I'll go through these again later. I'm sorry that I'm not going to read every single one of these, but it's getting kind of late here. Brain Rattler, I already saw the changes to that. It's not that big of a deal. What are some ones that I use frequently? Oh, here's a big one, actually, for everyone. Circle of Fear, Nostalgia, Regret, Anguish, and Guilt. The randomly generated Herald modifiers now grant 15 to 20% reduced reservation cost of their respective heralds from 30 to 40%, and 40 to 60% increased buff effect of their respective heralds from 70 to 100%. I wonder what would happen if you use a Divine Order on these. Try it and let us know. So, the circle rings from synthesis encounters were used in a lot of builds, and they received a pretty heavy nerf. I mean, they were pretty much best in slot for a lot of builds who ran heralds. So yeah, that's definitely a deserved nerf. Oh, Darkseer, I'm kind of interested in this. Now causes blind to not affect your chance to hit. Oh yeah, they spoiled this early, so I'm not going to bother. Duskblight, Essentious, man, there's so much. Oh, Fevered Mind, another one that affects Archmage. For those thinking about that, no longer increases the mana cost of skills by 50%, no longer grants 30 to 40% increased spell damage. Now causes notable passive skills and radius to be transformed to instead grant 10% increased mana cost of skills and 20% increased spell damage. Now has a small radius. Existing versions of this item are not affected by these changes. It'll also be limited to 1, which does not affect existing versions of the items. So basically, you're going to have to find a place on the skill tree where you can get a good amount of notables that you can hit with this, because 10%, like the 20% spell damage and 10% increased mana, you can actually potentially get a similar amount of power out of it, but you can only have one. So Archmages will probably still use Fevered Mind, and they'll find some clever place to put it. Let's see, Gloomfang. Okay, I was just talking about Gloomfang earlier, so I'll look at this one as well. No longer causes projectiles to gain 15 to 20% of non-chaos damage as extra chaos damage per chain. Now causes projectiles to have chained to gain 20 to 35% of non-chaos damage as extra chaos damage. Now grants 30 to 40% increased projectile speed. Existing versions are unaffected. Okay, so that means you can't just scale it with the new molten ball, molten. Hang on, I can't remember the names of skills right now. Molten Orb. So the new Molten Orb, you can't really double scale it with Gloomfang and its new Threshold Jewel, unfortunately. What? Magma Orb, that's it. Thank you. Molten Ball. Yep, it's Magma Orb. I'm going to blame that on the alcohol. So you can't double dip that with Gloomfang, unfortunately. I was wondering about that. I'm sure there are all these really great changes that I'm going to have to read through later. But anything... Oh, Malachi's Loop. Oh, that's not the one I thought it was. Never mind. I thought that was the Ziggy D ring. Maybe it is. But doesn't seem that interesting anyway. So we'll just skip past that. Oh, yeah. Namahu's Flame, a lot of people like using this for like the cyclones. Now converts 60% of physical damage to fire damage rather than 50%. Poet's Pen, improved behavior around animation canceling. Now works similar to Spellslinger support. That's good. So that's just strictly a buff. Let's see. Anything else cool? Rolling Flames no longer grants Fireball additional radius based on the distance traveled. Instead, it now grants 30 to 50% chance to scorch, but prevents Fireball from igniting. This doesn't affect existing versions of the jewel, however, it's now limited to 1, which does affect existing versions. Okay, so yeah, it just kind of changes the way that Fireball functions. I don't really remember what Scorch does off the top of my head. I never really use it. Magna, I like that one. Tried it the other day with multiple projectiles and faster cast. Yeah, Magma Orb's a pretty interesting skill. It used to have this really OP function where you stacked a bunch of chains and had a Gloomfang amulet, but they moved the way that Gloomfang amulet functions to Threshold Jewel for it. So it'll work a lot differently. Oh, the Savior. Mirage Warriors have been renamed Mirage Saviors to differentiate them from those created by General's Cry. Strike skills used by Mirage Saviors cannot hit additional targets. This affects all official or existing versions of this item. This change is required to maintain server performance, as builds using the Savior with certain strike skills were causing enough calculations to put noticeable strain on the servers. It was accidentally missed in the development manifesto. So it looks like people were DDoSing the servers with the Savior. So they fixed that. That's cool. I can get behind that. Let's see. Oh yeah, Starforge. A lot of people. Split personalities limited to 2, so all of you int stackers trying to use like 8 split personalities, sorry bros, that's gone. Starforge now has 200 to 300% increased physical damage from 400 to 500%. Now gains a 30% increased global physical damage implicit by default, overriding the base type, because previously its implicit gave 30% increased elemental damage, which did nothing because it couldn't do elemental damage. Existing items can be ruthlessly brought back into a reasonable balanced state with the Divine Orb. Alright, so they're just admitting straight up that it's a huge nerf to Starforge. Even with the 15% increased damage of the base type, going from 400 to 500% damage down to 200 to 300% is a really, really, really big nerf, unfortunately. Oh yeah, Troll Timber Spire. I can look at this one. Now causes both you and your totems, rather than just you, to regenerate 0.5% of life per second per each summoned totem. Okay, that's not enough to make me want to actually use it, unfortunately. Voidbringer no longer increases the mana cost of skills by 40 to 80%, now grants plus 40 to 80 to the mana cost of skills instead. Existing items are unaffected. It's going to be a whole lot harder to get like a 7,000 mana cost skill for your Archmage, for sure. Let's see. Wildfire has been mostly redesigned. Oh yeah. Okay, that's already been spoiled, but I know somebody was talking about Molten Strike earlier, so we'll talk about Wildfire. It now grants 10 to 15% increased fire damage, but it no longer grants additional projectiles or increased area of effect. It now causes Molten Strike projectiles to chain once, and causes Molten Strike to fire 50% fewer projectiles. So basically the way it works is it now kind of works like you're firing magma orbs from your Molten Strike if you have the Threshold Jewel, is what I think happens, because since they're bouncing projectiles, when they chain they literally just bounce off the ground, kind of like magma orb is how I'm gonna guess it's gonna go. All right, but anyway, moving on pushing it on. Monster changes. Due to the number of changes making it much easier to reliably stun tough enemies, many bosses are now immune to stun while stunned and for a short time after the stun ends. This sucks. This is what I was talking about earlier. You can't chain stun things anymore. So all of the stun increases they're doing, regular map bosses have 2-second stun immunity after you stun them, and the big bosses, like the big boys, your Shaper, your Elder, your Cirrus, all those, they have a 4-second stun immunity, which is a really long time. I mean, I don't know, it's kind of hard to stun those big bosses anyway, but it is doable, and you can't really get rewarded for stacking a bunch of stun duration and lowered enemy stun threshold, that kind of thing. So that feels kind of bad. Base distance an enemy is knocked back by knockback effects is now based on the enemy's size. Smaller enemies are knocked further back than larger enemies. I like that. Yeah. That's an entertaining change. I don't know how much of a actual function it serves, but it makes sense. You know, in universe, it might make me more, I guess, invested in PoE because it has that little detail. The Man Tracker monster and Hunter influence maps now spread their spit attacks out rather than all spitting at once. It is now correctly categorized as an attack, and it will be mitigated as such. So I guess you won't be just one shot by all those snake guys popping out of the ground and shooting at you all at once, which is good because you can't become immune to poison anymore in that fight. So you need all the help you can get. Monsters will deal extra chaos damage, many of whom are encountered in a breach now, now say so beneath their nameplate. Note that this does not change the balance of these monsters. Okay, so they're just making some more visual clarity. If you hover over a monster that does extra chaos damage, you'll now see it instead of just being, hit by a bunch of extra chaos damage and not know why. Abyss changes. The area transition to an abyssal depth area now becomes interactable more quickly after appearing. That's good. Nobody likes waiting around for that abyssal depth. Although it does have a really cool animation, seeing it rise out of the ground slowly, shaking with the light coming off. It's pretty cool. Monsters, crystals, and other boss encounter elements are now destroyed when Amanamu is defeated. Fair enough. Betrayal changes. Elrion's unholy relics and sentinel minions now die when Elrion is defeated. Unholy relics summoned by Immortal Syndicate members who possess Boo's bottle now disappear when that member is defeated. Ground effects created by the Immortal Syndicate members will likewise disappear when the associated member is defeated. Good. I hate this so much. I hate waiting those stupid red tornadoes to disappear so I can talk to the stupid Syndicate members. This was the most annoying thing, and I'm so happy they changed this. So, best change of the patch right here. You can now quick move items in between your inventory and various Betrayal Safe House benches. That's useful. Okay, yeah, because before when you control click things, you know how they'd automatically go into your stash or into a vendor? You couldn't do that for Betrayal benches, which was kind of annoying. Map tiers and locations have been shuffled, though the pin locations for maps has not changed. Most maps are now initially found in a different tier. Unique maps have not moved or changed tiers, improved the responsiveness of Cirrus's Storm to the phase transitions, improved the layouts of the Spider Lair map to minimize backtracking. Good, I hate backtracking. Zana can now send you on a mission to find and activate a Legion monolith. Hey, Legion from Zana missions. That's cool. I like that. Big fan. Zana League mods. So what do we have? Fortune favored the brave, as always. We have Anarchy for 2 chaos, Breach for 2 chaos, Ambush for 3 chaos, Nemesis for 4 chaos, Harbinger for 4 chaos, Metamorph for 5 chaos, and Legion for 6 chaos. Well, it's not bad. Nemesis is back, so chance your headhunters, I guess. But yeah. Alright, that's pretty cool. Oil costs for notable passives can now be revealed by holding Alt while hovering over the passive, so it doesn't automatically show it, I guess. You have to press Alt. Map icons for map stash tab will now display which Atlas region they are in when hovered over. Hey, that's actually huge. I really like that. That's really important for figuring out where you wanna go next. The stash tab list no longer closes after you select a tab. Added the ability to hide, remove only stash tabs. A lot of people do like that. Nice. Does sound like it's going to be harder now, but I do like the challenge so far. Just getting started tier 4 to 5 maps. Get killed at least once or twice a day to every 2 days. Yeah, that's pretty common, but PoE is a pretty complicated game. Even if you're just following a guide when you're first getting started, it takes a little bit to get used to. To be fair, this next league will almost certainly be easier than Delirium. Delirium was the hardest mechanic we've had in a really long time in terms of really pumping up the danger in your standard map. So it'll probably actually be less hard overall, I would imagine. Quest rewards. I'm not going to go over the quest rewards. You guys can look into that. PvP changes. PvP exists. For those who didn't know, there's PvP in Path of Exile. I'm here to remind you of that. And then bug fixes, which I'm going to ignore. So that pretty much covers everything. My voice is dead. But yeah, I had fun. And I hope you guys enjoyed. I can't wait for the new league. I'm really excited. I put out a new video today talking about my league starter. So if you haven't checked that out yet, you can go check that out now. I'm gonna leave though, so I hope you guys enjoyed. This has been Ryan from Behind Eyes Gaming, and I will see you next time. Bye.